All right.
Looks like we got some early comers.
The numbers are going up. It makes Rob happy, you know.
I'm a numbers guy. I don't know who the hell Yoda is, but I know numbers. So.
Oh man.
So for those of you coming in, just so you guys know, we have officially this sets a new precedent. This has never happened in golf webinar history before. We've impeached Scott Merchant for the third time now.
But I'm still here.
So
I'm still here. I'm not leaving.
But welcome aboard, everybody. Say hi in the chat window. See who's here.
We might be on like a New Year's hangover. Maybe nobody wants to, maybe nobody wants to type in.
Albert. There we go. Minnesota. I bet it's a warm, sunny day in Minnesota today. Stay warm, Mary Jo.
He's paying for you.
So you did hear that. Mr. Protos, hello.
Just for the record, 3 of the gurus are in warm weather locations, and I am not. So
that's right.
It's supposed to be 88
We
degrees.
know better.
88 degrees tomorrow in San Diego.
88?
88 tomorrow in San Diego. Yeah.
That's a heat wave for you boys.
It is hot.
Yeah.
Oh, my buddy Phil.
Let's see here. Let me pull it up. What's it say? It is 66 right now. High today, 81. High tomorrow, 88. Saturday, 84. Sunday, 82.
But you can't physically go anywhere, unlike Kent, who can just go and.
We can't go anywhere. I mean, this is why. Yeah, this is why they lock us down. They you're locked down, but we're going to give you nice weather. So enjoy it from your window.
And Mr. O'Malley canceled or moved a round of golf for this, so we're actually negatively affecting industry rounds by having this webinar today. So we're down by 4.
I don't know. He probably could have sold his round for more than what he was going to pay for it. So
somebody pitched me on that one a couple of years ago. This is before the demand, obviously, which was kind of like a stock market for golf rounds. And I was like, okay, you buy the Saturday because I'm going to play at 75, but I have an opportunity to resell it if somebody wants to pay me $100 for it. I was like,
could you short it?
Yeah, I was going to say you got shorts and puts and the whole deal.
Yeah. Like nobody will play it. Yeah.
Hey, one thing to mention, all of you coming in case we forget to talk about it later because we get so busy talking about everything else, is episode 6 of 6 is 1 week from today. Thursday next week. So we wanted to wait to not confuse like registration for any of you. Registration notices, at least from some of us are going to be going out to all of you tomorrow and in the next few days to get registered. But mark it on your calendars. Same bat time, same bat channel Thursday next week.
And then we've also preliminary talked about getting a social component for the attendees to line up with the PGA show and the Golf Business Conference. So we might do a virtual webinar. We're looking at maybe a Zoom or something like that to have maybe a drink-a-thon for those people that have made it through. Whitey, are you attending the virtual Golf Business Conference or the virtual PGA show? Are you signed up for those things?
I am, but I'm not signed up yet. We're still trying to figure out where we're going to be and how we're going to do it. But yeah, we're doing it.
Okay, good.
I know that all 3 of our companies, for those of you attending, are exhibiting at the PGA show. So pretty much the same as you're talking to us now. Pop in there and say,
no, but better. It'll be so much better.
Yeah.
Okay.
I guess we should probably go ahead and get going. We're a minute.
Let's do it.
Here.
Yeah.
Let's do it. You got your numbers, so keep climbing there for you. So, but thanks everybody for attending. We're looking forward to a great and lively and insightful episode today. Scott Merchant here, Club Profit. With us always, Kent Ashby from One-to-One Marketing and Ignite Marketing Services. Rob Hoffman, Chairman of the Board of Directors for Gallus Golf.
No.
No? Okay,
no.
sorry. All right.
CMO, Chief
CMO.
Chief Marketing Officer.
And we brought in another guest guru because we found some excitement actually generated from the guest gurus, and based off of last week's or 2 weeks ago's comments that we don't own a golf course, we brought in somebody that owns a golf course. So, Tom O'Malley, aka Whitey O'Malley. If you haven't met him, you'll get to meet him a little bit here today, and you'll see his mug. A lot of times at golf industry conferences, golf NGCOA shows, always filling the noodle with new ideas, but he's also providing those new ideas. And we bring Whitey in today because he has experience in the dynamic pricing solution, as I think a lot of people maybe have. But I look at Whitey as individual golf course owner, individually owned and run. I would say middle of the road, Whitey, maybe middle higher end of the road in the Denver market. So it's not like some anomaly on both sides where he's a management company that has, 2 people locked in a room doing dynamic pricing. He's not some, $250 golf course that has, people flying to come visit his place. I think it's middle of the road, America, okay market in Denver, okay at a good golf course. And that is, I think, kind of the middle of the road. Of people will always put themselves, oh, well, I'm not that, I'm lower end, or I'm not that, I'm higher end. That's all good. But we wanted to plant our feet in the ground here a little bit with a golf course owner. So, and you can chat and harass him or ask him questions, hopefully here. But before we begin, the legal firm we use, Dewey, Cheatham, and Howe, we're not telling you what to charge. Okay, we're only analyzing a business practice that lots of other industries use to potentially make your facility more profitable. That's it, right? So what you decide from here on out, whether you keep the same price forever and ever, or whether you start to implement some of this stuff, is completely and totally up to you. We know that every facility is different. Myrtle Beach is different than California, is different than Maine, is different than Florida and Texas. Got it. We're not arguing that. Take what you're seeing here and learning here, apply it in your own brain to what you think is happening to your facility. Because with this, there is no one right answer. There might be shades of gray up or down. For our private clubs here, as Rob always says, I think you can learn something here. Private clubs, historically, I think especially since the advent third-party discounting and grouponing and bartering, et cetera, they are adjacent to what goes on in the public market. You are not alone, meaning that what you're doing in your business can have an effect based off of what's going on the public side. So if everybody around you on the public side starts charging $10, that affects your ability to collect monthly dues, get new memberships, the guest fees that you charge, the cart fees that you charge. So being aware of what goes on the pricing side, even though it, on the surface, it looks like just a public issue, I think it's very much insightful for private clubs. And there are companies out here in the golf space, and there are more and more of them that are coming that specialize in this category as its primary business. So there are things that we do at Club Profit. There are things that Kent does at One-to-One Ignite. There's certainly things that Rob does and his past and background that he'll get into. But there are people that that's what they do. And so some of these people might be in the chat. We'll mention some of them by name as they go. But as you do your research, you'll find that there is a vibrant marketplace of providers as it relates to demand-based pricing, which is good because you want to have some options there that you choose from. So for me, since I'm a child of the 80s and we used to watch Price is Right, to me, I simplify this thing, come a knucklehead. This to me is demand-based pricing in a nutshell. And at least Rob got the joke when I brought this up in our recall, which is this is the game Cliffhangers from Price is Right. And you would bid on something, and how far you're away, the cliffhanger goes up, and he starts yodeling his song, which I'm not going to sing for you, Rob. He starts yodeling on his way up, right? And how high is he going to go, right? And he starts moving. Let me do it this way. He starts moving up the mountain, and eventually, if you're too high, he can fall off the mountain. Okay, so there are ways in demand. You know what? I'm just going to crank this up, and I'm going to be $150 for my green fee. You might fall off the mountain. All right. So, but the goal is how do we keep getting the yodeling man to keep going higher, because ultimately that will drive revenue. right? So the way I look at it is this, which is the true definition is for demand-based pricing, or fluid pricing, as they sometimes call it, is varying your price of the product based off of what's happened in the past, so historical numbers, what's happening real time, boots on the ground, okay, or forward thinking metrics. Hey, we're going to have the Super Bowl here. The price of my hotel or my golf course should go up that week, and kind of the mishmash of those things lead to what should be why you want to actually climb that mountain. Demand-based pricing is actually the number one way to grow your revenue when your supply is finite, or your supply is finite, but there's just this enormous cost to expand. So airlines, people like to say airlines, okay? The reason they went to it is because unless I'm going to start spending money on more jets and more planes, I have to make do with what I have here. I think that applies, at least in this case, a little bit to the golf course, which is, if I'm 18 holes, I got to make the best of that 18 holes, unless there's an immense cost here to adding another 9 or acquiring another 18-hole golf course. All right. So I need to do more with the same. This theory now is taught in schools. There are people with MBAs in this specific, education silo. It's evolving, is how I would put it. It's based off of some basic, economic theories, supply and demand. It's based off of, your historical implementation. It's based off of what the customers are saying about your product and being able to react to that. And now here in 2020, there's a lot of it now that can be based off of algorithms and computers and predictive performance. So you kind of mash all that together. I think what we'd like to do here is take what you see in other industries or lessons learned from other industries, take what's happening with COVID and golf, which we talked about here for the previous 4 episodes, and then apply it maybe to some options for you for the 2021 season. So we had a great call yesterday with Whitey, and he said other industries do it. He's like, yeah, but, and it was the best. I don't want to take his thunder too much, but we're going to talk. Golf is a little different, right? And why is it a little different, Whitey, when you start doing demand-based pricing? If you remember what you told me.
Yeah.
I'm putting you on the spot. Remember what you said? You said, yeah, you don't have, demand-based pricing is great for an airline or a hotel, but.
Yeah, Whitey, you were just mentioning like basically you don't see these people in the hotel or the travel industry. You don't see these people at the grocery store.
When you get a car, you get a hotel, or you get an airline ticket, you're on a dynamic pricing platform, but you don't have to see those people in the community. I think that's what holds a lot of people back from trying dynamic pricing, is that at times they're going to be paying more than what they would have on a flat rate, rack rate type of a scenario. And you got to see these people in the grocery store, and might be a little bit harder.
That was good for me to hear too, because it's like, oh yeah, we can just take the lid off and start raising the prices. Oh, that's fine, but do remember that when you're getting your oil changed, there's the guy that used to have a Saturday permanent tea time or something like that. So even with that said, though, I look at this saying, doesn't mean you shouldn't start somewhere. There have been a path already paved in the golf industry from large MCOs. One of the trailblazers, and you can read the case study that's been going on with Myrtle Beach, Kathy Enns from Cornell University. If you're on the NGCUA a listserv where you're able to see their golf business archives, you're able to see and read some of the case studies and things that have gone on. If there's people from Myrtle Beach, listening, these are good resources to reach out to, because they've actually started to look at, okay, how do we evaluate it? How do we look at the historicals, and how do we adjust going forward, and what's the outcome? As we kind of alluded to in the last episode, 2021 is probably the best time again of all things that you're going to do, whether it's new prices or new loyalty programs or new activities at your facility. This is probably the best time to begin, and especially as it relates to demand-based pricing, because it works better with that thing called demand. And that's where the industry had struggled, which is, how do I raise prices? Because I'm actually trying to cut prices to try to get people to come. Well, literally drop of a hat, things have switched. And if you've been in that cut mentality and that discount mentality, your eyes should be open now a little bit, that if I've got 100 people, trying to call that, 9 a.m. tea time, the demand, my supply is limited. And in the golf industry, we have done this already. Whoever in the golf industry came up with weekday versus weekend, whatever pioneer that was when they opened the golf course, they were thinking about demand-based pricing. I don't have as many people that want to play on Thursday as I do on Saturday and Sunday. And I look at the scale there a little bit as kind of a 0 to 10, right? So if it's 0 to 10, me as a guru, I'm going to peg us at a 3, right? And I maybe Kent and Rob and White will disagree, but overall industry-wide, I think we're at a 3. Because we do some of this already. If you were 0, if the industry was 0, it'd just say, hey, I'm $60. Doesn't matter if it's Monday at 4 p.m. or Saturday at 8 a.m. It's just one price all day, every day. That to me is kind of a 0. But just kind of the industry and where we stand overall, it's generally accepted practice to do weekday, weekend. There's generally accepted practice to do peak and twilight, regular rate or regular customer type versus a senior customer type, and seasonal based off of weather, summer and winter kind of being that. And you look at this now in the COVID spectrum, which is weekday, weekend, it was all predicated on 5 days a week. I'm at the office punching the clock from 9 to 5. We know that's not true anymore, right? We also assumed that twilight got less valuable the later you went, right? So if I started at 60, I should go down to 50, come down to 40, because my 2 or 3 o'clock in the afternoon isn't as valuable. I think we're going to hear that might not be the case anymore. We also assumed in the golf industry prior to COVID that the seniors were the only people available to fill my my weekday mornings. I should say weekday mornings. I don't have anybody else to fill it. Well, we know that the time schedule based off of the pandemic has changed buying patterns. And it also assumed that golfers went into hibernation. That, yep, it's Labor Day, my club's going to the garage, and that's it. Well, that maybe used to be the case, but I don't go into hibernation as much because I don't have anything else to do. So are you still open? Can I still play? Are there simulators or things that I can do? So I think that's where I'll jump off, and I'll turn it over to Rob here to kind of just through some of his thoughts.
Thanks, Scott. So I want to talk a little bit about pricing methods. So with what Scott's talking about, I agree actually 100%, which you don't always hear me say that with Scott, which is part of the fun in our relationship.
Oh, great.
So I agree 100% with where we're at with all this. And I feel like there's a lot of opportunity for us to implement a lot of what Scott's talking about. I also agree with what Whitey brought up, that, yeah, you're going to have to face these people, at the oil change line or in the grocery store or whatever it might be. But there's a foundation that needs to go into all of this. And to me, that foundation is you need to have some idea what your price needs to be. So I want to talk about some basic pricing methods. Maybe this is like a little, Scott mentioned their MBA classes on this. I happen to take a handful of them myself on some of this pricing stuff. So I want to share it, but what I want to kind of give a little bit of a footnote in this. This is a very, very long discussion that is not going to happen in this webinar. So I'll mention it again at the end. If you want to have individual discussions with me about your pricing after you hear some of all this guru stuff I'm about to spew out here, by all means reach out. Let's talk about it. We'll dig into your specific numbers, your specific pricing. What I'm about to get into is an exercise I went through with a golf course to get to here. So it's based on their real numbers. But I want to talk about basic pricing methods to start off with. So methods I break into 2 categories. Some are either based on your cost and your pricing based on cost, or some are market oriented. And then those get broken down even further. So cost, we're going to look at cost plus. So you're going to say, this is my cost, and we're going to add this much onto it, and that's how I'm going to price. Not always a lot of science going into that, but there are a lot of people that price that way. They say, well, take that and add $10 to it and put the price tag onto it and go. Let's price there. It's very similar to a markup, but some will say this is just our percentage. We always, we get an item in, this is what it costs. And the way I'm talking sounds like in the shop, same applies to greens fees. We know what our cost is. We mark it up by X percentage and we go. The next one is the one that I'm really going to dig into, and that's for return on investment. You as a business owner or course operator, your focus, at least in my opinion, should be your profit. What are we going to do to get into a profit-based business, and what do we want that return to be? If I'm making this investment in everything I'm investing in with my property, what do I want my return to be? How much money do I want to make from my business on an annual basis? That's where I'm going to dig in here in a moment. Other pricing methods, though. There's perceived value. Well, we're kind of we're not the bottom course. We're not really even the middle, but we're not the top. And the top courses are priced here, and the middle of the road courses are priced here. So we feel our perceived value is this. We'll price there. And some courses will price based on that. Some will go with a value price. We want to be smart in this. The courses we're competing against are all $75. Let's put us out there at $68 and we'll win that battle. Does that make sense in the long run? Maybe, maybe not. Some will go with a going rate. And don't confuse this with demand-based pricing or dynamic pricing. This is more of a look at the market, let's figure out what our going rate should be, and let's just put our number there. That's not really a demand or dynamic pricing model. There'll be an auction type pricing that'll be out there. Let's put it out there and see how high we can we can run this up to and where we can get to. And then there's some differential pricing that will go into the mix too. To quickly explain differential pricing for you, differential pricing it's used in cases where companies will charge different prices to different groups of customers for the same product or service. Most golf courses are doing that. You'll have senior rates, you'll have junior rates, you'll have players club rates. It can be based on relationships. So there can be some differential in pricing. You're using that. But ultimately for me, profit has to win. So in getting to profit in this, the way I want to kind of go through this path and go through some formulas for you, it may seem backwards in how a lot of you have gone about pricing before. But I'm going to say determine literally the dollar amount you'd like to see your business do as a whole in profit for a year. And again, that might seem backwards, but let's start there. So in the example, in the next slides, I'm not going to show them to you yet, but the preview is working with a golf course that says, hey, 2020, we did $100,000 net profit. It was a good year. Previous years, some years I was writing a check to keep the company in business for the year. Some years we were breaking even. It was a little bit hit and miss. 2020 was great. We made $100,000. We'd like to find a way to double that. We'd like to start making up some of the investment we made over the years. 2021, we want to see $200,000 net profit for the year. Great. So understand what that number is, and then understand proportionally what percentage of your gross revenue each vertical within your business does. So what I mean there is, what percentage of your gross revenue did food and beverage produce? What percentage of your gross revenue did merchandise produce? What percentage did greens fee money produce? Everything that you have that's coming into the big bucket, all those streams that are flowing into that big bucket of money that you have at the end of the year, what percentage did each one produce? Then we want to go to the next step as we're moving over. We want to calculate from there the desired profit dollars from each segment of your business. And we want to base this, again, for the sake of getting to pricing, we want to base this based on a flat year. You don't want to base your pricing assuming you're going to have an increase, assuming you're going to have a decrease. Let's just assume you're going to have a flat year. Everything's going to remain the same as last year. All the numbers will be the same. How do we get to our goal? So then we want to examine pricing per item and sell for that desired net profit. We want to determine which items can and which can't handle this price. So what I mean by that, and we'll get into this just a little bit, is you'll have segments where you'll say, I can mark up over my cost this item to get to that net profit by this, but this one, through being able to be market relevant with this and continue to sell it, maybe I can't have that kind of markup because the course down the street or Dick's Sporting Goods or whatever is selling at this, and it doesn't make sense for us to be able to sell this item at this price. So we'll look at market relevance as it plays into there. And then what I also want to say is, once we get to this price, once we get there at the end, I think you should consider setting your price points at a little bit above those necessary levels. You're going to have years, you guys have all seen this, where you have a year where, of the 30 days in June, 25 days it rains, and your playable days are down, and the numbers are down, and you're going to need to absorb that a little bit, or at least prepare for the potential to absorb some of those ebbs and flows of what happens in the golf industry. So we want to look at setting it a little bit above, and then you need to study that performance. One thing that anybody who works with me hears me say is, if you're measuring it, you can manage it. If you're not measuring it, it's just all loosey-goosey. Anything's going on with that. So I want to dig into some of the formulas on this, and I promise I'm going to go quickly. I did mention to you, this is a very long conversation. Have it with me offline about your specific numbers, but I'm going to give you a little insight. So if we looked, again, real course example here, desired total net profits, $200,000. So the next part of the formula, this is 3 slides of formula here. We want to look at just Green's fee segment of their business alone. Last year they did 15,000 rounds, so let's prep for 2021 at 15,000 rounds. We're going to do 15,000 rounds of golf. So we want to determine the portion of gross revenue produced by Green's fee revenue. So in this example, their business did about 1.5 million in gross revenue. They were charging $60 a round. They produced about $900,000 in Green's fee revenue. That portion of their business was 60% of their gross revenue. So if all things somehow by some magical thing were equal, that each vertical within your business, food and beverage, merchandise, golf, all those verticals, if they could perform at an equal level to get you to that profit goal, what you would need from golf would be that same 60% of the gross to your 60% of your net. So of the $200,000 goal you'd have, you need golf to produce $120,000 profit. So from there, we want to look at this a little bit further. So profit need from golf, okay? $120,000. What's it cost for a round of golf? So let's dig into this a little bit more. We want to look at that gross revenue example. So this is real world example. Their gross revenue is 1.5 million. As I mentioned, they made $100,000. So 1.4 million were their total operating costs. Again, I want to talk about all the verticals being equal. If we have a bigger discussion with you, we can kind of dig into how they all proportionally set up. But if all things are equal in the business, we're going to say, okay, 1.5 million minus that $100,000, we had a 1.4 million total operating cost. Green's fees accounted for 60% of that. And then when we divide that by 15,000 rounds of golf, we're basically at a cost of goods sold on Green's fees of $56 per round of golf, or a total of $840,000 in cost for a round of golf. So we got $56 to get a round of golf out there. Remember, they were charging $60. So we're not looking at a huge increase to get them to that profit goal. It's, we're talking reasonable things to double their numbers. We're just gonna have to bump up their dollars per round, $4 per round of golf. Again, $120,000 is 60% of that 200,000 divided by 15,000 rounds, or they need $8 profit per round of golf to get to there, to get to the minimum average price they need to get to that profit goal. $64 a round, price increase of $4 a round from where they were. So what I want to mention here, though, is this is the average. So from here, what we need to adjust is a rack rate based on all of the classifications. So we need to dig in on the next slide. I'm sorry, let me go back. Let me go back. We need to dig into the verticals within this Green's fee. So we've got twilight rates. We've got all the rates that Scott was just talking about, senior rates, weekend rates, weekday rates, and we need to look at last year, what proportion of those 15,000 rounds did each of those verticals produce, and take that percentage and start to apply it and dig in and say, okay, we need to dig in and get to that $64 average from all of those. So we may have a weekend round rate, it might be $99, and a twilight round rate might be $42, ultimately getting to the $64 per round. That means that some rounds you might throw out there that you are losing money on the round. Your $56 cost per round is going to remain pretty static because operating your business is going to cost the same pretty much any time of day, across the board. So there may be rounds that you lose money on, but keep in mind that's a customer that you're gaining. Maybe that guy that can't play on Tuesday at 3:30, you can get him in and he can have a good experience and you convert him to a weekend player and you're getting that $99 rate out of him. Again, something we can dig into. I keep saying dig into. Something we can really delve into in a very granular way for all of your rounds to get this pricing just right. But going back to pricing based on profit, you're setting your price, that foundation for what Scott's about to dig back into. Why do I keep saying dig into? For what Scott's about to go back into here on how to set this up technology and where to go. But you have to have a foundation of where you want to go with this. So from here, we've got this foundation. Becomes a long discussion. We need to talk about which of the verticals in your business can handle this, which can handle more, which can handle less. Maybe that driver that you're selling, the new tailor-made Sim2 driver, maybe you find out, you know what, to be market relevant in this price, I can only mark it up this wee little bit. So we have to absorb that where we can't get to our profit goal and pricing in that item. We need to increase the portion of it we have, and another one where we can't absorb it, where the market will bear it. Or maybe we look at some items that we're selling and realize, you know what, this just doesn't meet our goals. We can't get to our pricing goals by carrying these items. We scratch them. You know, we don't sell it anymore. We say, hey, you know, we want you want the tailor-made Sim2 driver. We'll talk to you about, you know, you can get a lesson from us. We'll talk to you about what shaft you need, what you need to do, everything you need to do. Go buy it from Dick's. They're the best price. I mean, maybe that's where you go. I'm not saying that for certain that that's the direction you should go, but in really delving into where you're at price-wise, you're going to learn which items are relevant to your end goal of profit. And again, let's have a little bit deeper discussion about some of these things to get to that baseline price for you to meet profit goals. If you're not basing prices on profit specifically, I don't think you're ever going to get there.
You were about to say dig into again, Rob. I heard you.
Caught me. I caught myself too.
Well, what's interesting, I guess, at least from a high level, there is people might, you know, dig in and capture, you know, hopefully all of that. Which
it works. You said dig in.
Right, which is you start actually at the end. A lot of people say, well, my weekend grain fee's 60. I'm going to make it 62. Well,
right.
Is that when you throw those numbers out to the end, is that going to cover the new parking lot you got to put in? You know, like you have to just start backwards. And I think we got to this actual same point when we started talking about the customers and I think it was in the barter pricing, which is set the P&L the way you want to have it, which is kind of your ideal business, and work backwards. You can always discount and cut and do the things that we used to, but start from the end and work backwards. I think that's pretty interesting.
Yeah. So there's one question here that I think is real key to answer before we move on. Brad asked it. He says, you know, after this math, what if the price per round increases our rate to the point that we are higher priced than another course is close by? So one thing I didn't mention is that they're a higher standard than ours. They should command a higher rate than what we would. One thing that I didn't mention in this is you might get to a point where you have to look at your costs, where you have to look at this and say, I got to drive down some of my costs. I need to look at some operating costs here, or you might need to look at, okay, what do I have to do to level up and get to there? Yeah. So you know, it can drive some cost discussions for you as well, where you dig into this and say, well, this is where I want to go, or you might need to adjust your profit goals. You might need to accept, hey, I might not be able to meet that profit goal this year. No, I wanted to. That was a big audacious goal there to get to doubling profit from a good year. Maybe the goal is a 1.5x. Maybe I go to 150,000 instead of 100,000. With maybe the 2022 goal is to get to 200 or 250,000. And throughout the course of this year, I look at where do I need to trim costs, or where can I level up our golf course that I can get up to that next tier. So there's a juggling in there of what your costs are too.
Nobody's better than the golf industry at cutting costs. Right. So I think if anything, at least the first 20 years I'd been in it, just the ability to find and cut and trim and all that stuff. I think for me, I want you to set those revenue goals high and then figure out how to price it accordingly. You can always come back down, but I think this is actually the time to build up, and I think we'll get to that when Whitey goes. So I'll just take it into what are steps that you could theoretically do. What are some things that have happened in the golf industry to kind of lead us to where we are, and tools that are at your disposal. So I think kind of step one of those things is a kind of a historical utilization of what I call sophisticated pricing or sophisticated time date pricing. One of the ones that I think does this extremely well is the Glen Club. I don't know if anybody from Kemper is on here, but Glen Club is here in Chicago, and there's zeros here on all the numbers because we're in the off season, but literally every day and hour they'll put it into some sort of zone. Dark green, will be 185. Good, Brendan's here, he can tell me where I'm wrong. So let's say Friday afternoon and Saturday morning and Sunday morning are historically best times. Then those hours of those days will be at the max, $185. And then you start to see the colors show up throughout the day. It starts to turn a little lighter green in the midday and a little yellow. And so based off of what they've seen in the past, that's used to drive the price. That's a great way as you start to analyze your day parts. And look, what I put to the bullet point is looking at your past utilization can help you make really good predictive decisions. Oh, I didn't realize our Wednesday is a lot better than I thought it was. It's actually not bad. Well, maybe I need to make that price up a little higher. whatever point of sale you're using, whatever computerized T sheet you're using, they will be able to give you this answer. I'm 100% positive. No matter who you're using, they've got this in there. It's kind of, jacks are better for any T sheet provider is. I've got reports in there to look at to show me the high demand times, whether it's based off utilization, based off of dollars or RevPAR. Other courses in your market can also help you analyze this. Look to if there's other Kemper or Troon or other smart operators. If Whitey's doing something, you can actually look at and see. Oh man, look at this. He's doing this on Thursdays, and he's made a Thursday price versus just a weekend price. Sometimes you're able to see what other operators are already in there that have led the way, so that they've kind of pioneered it, and you can just kind of follow right on back of it and say, yeah, we're doing Wednesday, Thursday pricing as well. The other one, the second one I look at is kind of yield-based adjustment pricing, where a price gets triggered. Some people call this trigger, some people call it yield-based, where my price will adjust based off of fullness of my T sheet. If I get to a certain level, right? So in this example, it's if we get to 50% full, raise my price from something to something higher, right? It's automated. You can set up the rules in advance. You're sitting here in January and February having your coffee and doing it. You're not going to forget. The system will automatically trigger it in June. Hey, look at that. A Saturday that's at 50%. It goes up higher. I think almost all of the T-sheet providers might have this. Okay. If not, you should check. Certainly we do at Club Profit, but this usually is based off of the course that's being played. So if you're 18 or 36 holes, it's based off of the date range. So if you want to start this during the summer months, it's based off of the day specifically. So do this on Fridays and Saturdays, but not on Sundays. It's based off of the day part. So do it during this hour or not. And it can be based off of the advanced days out. So, this is another tool that people have been using that will adjust things automatically. If I don't have time to do this during the season, you might think about trigger-based or yield-based pricing where it can just automatically do this. So these are kind of steps as we go up. Again, the yodeling guy heading up, which is how sophisticated do you want to make your pricing, and what are some methodologies that other people in the industry have done? We've seen people do this with some great success. I think Fossil Trace, Whitey there in Denver, uses kind of a yield-based methodology. There's another one that I don't think had been used a lot that we have in Club Profit is kind of auction-based pricing. And Rob had mentioned it a little bit, which is, this might be a feature or feature set that we've never thought about using, and it's been available in the past, but all of a sudden post-COVID, it's actually might be in play, which is another way to let the market drive up your pricing. I think Jim Keegan had a great article in the fall, which was, this was the first time that golfers were not able to get the exact tee time at the exact course that they've always played forever, right? This was the first time there was scarcity, and the crack addicts started to itch a little bit because, wait a second, what do you mean it's Saturday in Denver and I'm used to being able to play? And because there were so many like-minded individuals that were wanting to play, it created some in the market. And that scarcity, you can actually capitalize on that. And auction is one of those ways that, okay, you want to play Saturday morning, from 8 to 10, that's my really busy time, then start to bid on those specific times. And well, I'll bid 70. Well, I'm an irrational bidder and my dad's coming in town and I want to play, I'll bid 95. So this might be the place for you to find irrational buyers, and eBay is a multi-billion-dollar company based off of irrational buyers buying crazy things, all across the board. So green fees could fit into that potentially. And I think it's maybe a way or a tactic to find some market equilibrium. Hey, I thought I was 70. Well, I didn't know there was an idiot out there that was going to pay 105. Good for him, good for me. So an auction methodology could be one of those ways to help you do that. And then the other one, I think, kind of where we're trending and where we're going up here is kind of on the fly demand pricing. There are companies out there, and I'll mention a few with Sagacity, with PriceSwitch, Dynamic Revenue Services, RevTech Plus. Golf Now does this with Golf Now Plus. I believe Golfback and the guys at Brown might be heading this direction. I think there's more to come, and if I forgot you, don't be mad at me. But there are people out there and companies out there that are working to perfect on-the-fly demand pricing, integrated back to your T sheet, that looks at the past, takes a look at the present, and tries to predict the future, right? And you put all those things in with a computerized software. The key is it would make those recommendations, it would make those changes to your price in real time. As golf course owners and operators, we don't have a lot of time to, oh, hey, I'm supposed to raise my price, and you go in and make all those things happen. It needs to be automated, it needs to be dynamic. And that's where you, if somebody's going to say, what is dynamic pricing? The highest end of that spectrum to me is on the fly demand automated pricing that's triggered based off of my past, my present, and my future, right? So with that, I'll turn it over to you, Kent, and you can speak to some of that, and then we'll let Whitey tell us where we screwed up.
Yeah, thanks, Scott. And like always, I'm going to go quick here so you guys can hear Whitey's story, because it's much more important than mine. But anyways, I'm going to go over a little bit about what to consider when setting prices. And a lot of you guys do this naturally. I just think it's something to bring up and kind of uncover. And that way, maybe you can think about it in a more sophisticated way here in 2021, just with everything changing as quickly as it is. And so the first thing, obviously, if you're going to be setting prices, you got to know your market well. And I think a lot of people have known their market well in recent past, like they've either secret shopped or played at their local courses, or experienced them in some way and know what they charge and what kind of course they have out there. But I think here recently, especially if you haven't done that research in the last couple of years, it's probably worth doing again and kind of seeing what courses are out there, what they charge, and actually going and visiting those courses so you know where you stack up. Because like someone mentioned, what if the course down the street from you is actually a little bit nicer and your plan was to raise your prices, and now you're going to be toe to toe with them price wise? That might not work. Like if someone has an easy substitute, if they can sit there and easily look and say, I can play this course for 45 and this course for 60, and they're very much similar, then if there's an easy substitute for somebody else, that can be a pricing discrepancy. It can be an issue for you. Even with golf, with as high as the demand is, that still could be a mistake. And your price needs to reflect if there are easy substitutes. So if you're in a very competitive golf market, I still do think you need to consider other people's prices, but no, they're probably looking to you to see what you're going to do with your pricing as well. So it's a double-edged sword. They're looking at you. I wonder what they're going to do with their pricing. And you're looking at them. I wonder what they're going to. And so someone's got to make the first move. And, in a perfect world, all the rates would go up. Everyone would. But the story pricing can tell a story. A lot of you guys are on the fringe. You're either a high-end, like luxury course, and you've priced yourself to tell that story. You've said you want to say, hey, this is where we're at. We're twice as much as anybody else in town, and we want you to know it because we're the best, right? And that's a story that you're trying to tell. There's also the flip side of that, the course, 9-hole course that you hit off mats for tee boxes, and you can go out there and play in a t-shirt and shorts and flip-flops and have a grand old time and only pay $20 or something. That could be the other side. You might want to tell the story of, hey, you can bring your kids out here. You don't need to be a golfer. It's basically miniature golf with beer and a tee. So that's it. That's fine too if that's a story you want to tell. If you don't want to tell a story about pricing at all, that's fine too. A lot of courses, I think, price themselves as average. We'd all look at the price and say, yeah, that runs perfectly. Like that makes sense for a course like yours, and that's fine. I'm not saying every course needs to price themselves, on the fringe. But I do think if that's the story you want to tell, then you can price yourself to kind of look and appear that way. Obviously, occupancy. That's why we're sitting here talking about this. With COVID, a lot of things, especially demand for golf, has changed, and occupancy rates are super high. And so if you're sitting there, I have many clients that have called me and say, I don't have any more carts. I can't sell any more tee times. I'm full from here to here. I can't. If that's the case, you need to look at those times of the day that you're pretty much at 100%, and maybe the delta between your lowest rate and highest rate there needs to be a larger gap, and I think that's where people, like with dynamic pricing and things, get turned away because they feel like it's just in an effort to move the rates up. But it can also go, it can work the other way. It can push demand intelligently into areas based off price. And And then loyalty, I think this is something that we need to consider if we are going to be changing prices. If you're going to be doing an aggressive rate change, that can hurt loyalty. I mean, obviously there's squeaky wheels out there that are going to always complain about the price, even if it goes up just a little bit. But there's also people that you could be, by raising prices, significantly impacting how much they pay for golf, especially if they're playing multiple times a year or a week. And so if that's the case, I do think that if you don't already have a loyalty program or some kind of reward program that rewards people for playing more often, and they can still kind of get access to those cheaper rounds of golf, maybe they have to play at certain times, maybe there's certain stipulations that they have to follow. But I do think that there should be some kind of safety net or something where you can direct people that want to play at your course multiple times a week, maybe a path for them to be able to still do that and not incur the super high prices that maybe the guy that plays once or twice a month is willing to pay. And obviously notice and consider the COVID related changes, maybe how long they'll be around. None of us really know, but try to use your best judgment there and take that into consideration while you're setting your prices here going forward. Some of the strategies that I've seen working, obviously we talked a little bit about premium pricing. So setting your price extremely high just to reinforce luxury or quality. I still think that's an important thing for people to do, especially if that's, say your goal is to try to get there. Maybe you've been making a lot of improvements at your facility and you think that you're kind of at that caliber now, but you are afraid to bite the bullet. Maybe you do need to raise your rates substantially and say, hey, we've made a lot of improvements here over the years and put a lot of money into this place, and we're going to start asking for it. And I think now is the time to do that if you're going to do that. Penetration pricing, this is obviously something a lot of private clubs do to get new members in the door, something like that. Maybe taking your dues away for a period, or not dues, but your initiation fee away for a little while, or lowering dues for a set amount of time just to attract new customers. This doesn't really happen too much in the public world. I mean, some people do slash their prices, but usually it's because their tee sheet's a little weak and they're just looking for the quick fix. Competitive pricing is obviously looking at your competitors and saying, okay, where do I fit amongst the competition, which we've kind of already talked about. The only thing is that doesn't take into consideration the cost of the product, like Rob was saying, or changing consumer demand, which is what we're facing now in golf. So if we're sitting here and looking at the demand of golf going up and up and up and just not doing anything about it, any smart, savvy business person is probably going to tell you that you're leaving money on the table. Geographic pricing, this is actually relevant to probably a lot of you, especially if you're in a more destination market, or if you're a resort facility that depends on travel. A lot of you guys might not be getting that travel golfer anymore like you used to, that used to pay $100+ for a round of golf at your resort. And now you're saying, okay, how do I attract the local guy back here that's only willing to pay $45 or $55 for a round of golf? I need to market to a different person this next year, at least the next 6 months, because that traveling golfer is probably not going to come back here. So geographic pricing can be like having a different price for locals or people that live within the county or whatever the case is. And that could be helpful, especially if you're a resort course that your prices are way up here, but the people that are paying that price are no longer coming because of COVID. So now you have to appeal to the people, a different way, and a different group of people altogether. Value-based pricing is just saying, let me hide our screens here a little bit. Value-based pricing is paying what the customer already knowingly is willing to pay. And I think private clubs can take value-based pricing into consideration, because if you know what the golfer, the public golfer is paying to play at a golf course maybe 5-6 times a month or whatever the case is, and you can do the math and then say, hey, if we offered a membership that was somewhere around the $200 mark for dues each month, we could actually tell people and advertise this as save money by, coming here and becoming a private club member, especially with the cost of golf, public golf going up potentially this next year. You private clubs, I think, have an opportunity to steal some of those public players. And lastly, I'll just give you all some takeaways. I think it makes sense to use 2020 as the closest gauge we can have to what we're going to see at least the beginning of 2021 golf season. So I think that's probably the smartest thing to benchmark off of. Don't wait for your competitors to change prices this year. I think they're probably going to be waiting on you just as much as you're waiting on them. So I think the it probably makes sense to be the one to do it now, so they see it and they go, hey, they're charging more, we should charge more. That's the reaction we're hoping for. Customers who get disgruntled about price, they're the minority. You're gonna get those people. Whitey can mention it a little bit too, probably, but I've had a couple clubs raise prices pretty significantly here in the last 6 months or so, and they surely get some feedback from it, some negative feedback from it, but they also have good scripting with their employees that can help them get out from under that pretty easily. And then consider if you are a private club, especially consider the rising cost of public golf and how that might help your membership actually become more valuable. So now I'm going to hand it off to Whitey, who's going to tell you about his experience with dynamic pricing and what they've seen with their facility.
Real quick, I think there's one thing to mention here before Whitey comes in to just kind of, sorry, Whitey, to kind of tackle what you said, Kent. One thing I want you guys, when you're watching this, to remember is in the previous 4 episodes of this, a lot of the things we talked about were driving to direct channel. And I know the one thing Kent mentioned is, the competitive influences and what's going to be seen in a competitive market for pricing out there. And I think one thing that we're going to kind of bring back in the next episode and talk about, but we should mention previous episodes too, is driving that level of loyalty and experience that gets that customer onto your channel alone, where you're removing some of the competitive influences because only you're visible due to experience, things you're providing like loyalty, other pieces to get them your customer and have them there. So yeah, sorry about that, Whitey.
No, that's awesome. Perfect.
All right, Whitey. Let's hear where we're off or where we got it. Let's.
No, I agree with everything said above. We just went just a little different direction on pricing and went with dynamic pricing with Club Profit, and we use PriceWing, and we. A couple of the bullet points, kind of a little bit of over 40,000 foot view. We were really disgusted at first with it and how it wasn't what we thought it was going to be until about the end of, I think it was 2018 and going into 2019. We decided to take the lid off the ceiling of the dynamic pricing model on Club Profit, and we were just phenomenally amazed, just blown away by the results. So I'm going to go over that in a little bit, but the first bullet point is you're not going to make everybody happy. So somewhere down the way here, I'm also going to be making mention of, if you don't have a strong management team and or stiff upper lip, I would recommend not doing dynamic pricing. You really kind of got to, you're going to be a kind of a leader in the area of doing it, and it's not always easy. So stiff upper lip. I see Phil from Kendra's on. Him and I talked about this from Canada. He went through the same thing. If you can't accept that, yeah, just don't do it. You'll make more money. I mean, it's hard for me to quantify. My wife and I have been trying to figure out how to quantify it, but there is no doubt about it. It leaves a tremendous amount on the table at the end of the day. It takes this dynamic pricing model takes a little bit of management and commitment. So if you're wishy-washy, once again, don't try it. And a big learning curve. So you're constantly tweaking the programs and the time, the different pricing. What you can control, you are tweaking, and you have to constantly be looking at it. Go ahead. Everybody thinks don't be afraid of your customer or pricing high. We thought we were X amount in our market, and I see there's another Tom Woodard was on this call, and he realized where we were in the Denver pricing. We have kind of overtaken a couple other golf courses in our local area, and we're not doing it. It's being mandated by what we're getting. So maybe we were too low. Maybe we were under selling ourselves for years. We don't know. So set limits if you're worried about predatory pricing. It started running away from us in April and May of 2020 with the COVID. We started weekend tee times were getting out of hand. So we went from $83, $84, $85. We just put a cap on it at $79 with a cart and range balls. So we kind of stayed in that pricing just because we didn't want to look like we were price gouging, and we thought it was still a fair price because that's what we were charging before. I think we talked about this a little bit earlier about the golf courses as part of a community. So one of the hard things about doing a dynamic pricing model is, you think you're going to be looking at seeing people at the grocery store, at the auto parts store, or what have you, and they're going to be, you don't want to make them mad. You got to live with these people too. So you want a good and fair pricing system. So that's a little bit different than what the airlines and the hotels and the car rental industries deal with. Everybody when you talk about dynamic pricing, everybody thinks about the weekend prime time. We found out that's not, we were kind of filling those anyhow, probably 80 to 90% full on the weekend mornings. But where the dynamic pricing really kicked us in the go was on the off times. And we were really surprised by that. So that really helped from the noon to 2 o'clock on weekends and weekdays, just went berserk. So round increase, we down below online booking, I think our rounds were in 2019 we had a bad season in Denver. We did 23,500 starts. In 2020 we did 46,000. So but that wasn't all due to dynamic pricing. Our online booking before in 2018, this is a big deal. The online booking rate for us went from 20% in 2017, 2018 roughly, to about 50% in 2019 when we really kicked it in high gear with the dynamic pricing, and people are starting to figure out, hey, if I want to find the best price or the price I want to pay, I got to go online. And once they do that, they're booking online. And in 2020, we hardly picked up the phone at all. 85 is low. It was higher than 85.
Wow.
But with that comes a credit card that started holding that tee time, and it also gave us their email that went right into our one-to-one. So it couldn't have been a better system at a better time. So database increasing due to online booking, no-show rates. We went from a no-show rate of roughly 4% to virtually zero. And that just blew our mind. We had no red on our tee sheet of no-shows, almost zero. So,
did you hammer those players, Whitey? Did you start doing some?
We didn't, but at the end of it, we started getting pissed that we have so much demand that people want to play that we started charging them $50 if they didn't no-showed us. And most people just apologized when they found out they got charged $50. Only one out of the whole season contested it. So. And we gave him a rain check, so it was no harm, no foul there. So
good. That
was a big boost right there. That alone would be worth doing the dynamic pricing, in my opinion. But you can see the numbers increasing green fees and cards over 2019. It's quite alarming to us too. Customers won't get it. People think that's the truth. People on this call. That's it's a fear, but it's not reality. We had very little to no kickback.
And other industries have been doing it for so long that all you have to do is say, it's like the airlines do it. And dynamic pricing is not some far off, really weird, really modern concept. This industry is late getting into the dynamic pricing game, so they really understand it.
Yeah.
The airlines do it. The Colorado Rockies do it. Is the script that simple? Just like, that's it. Say that, and
yeah,
the customer comes with it?
Think of it. I mean, in the Denver market, like literally the HOV lane does it.
Yeah. It's all done. Right.
So, the show houses do it now. It's not a complicated concept for customers to understand.
And if they didn't want to play 65, when I'm working the pro shop counter, I say, well, you could have played for 45 in 2 hours, at 3 o'clock, not at 10 o'clock, or book out 2 weeks. The guys right before you that just checked in, they're paying $45. You're paying $58. All you got to do is book 2, and then they go, oh, okay. They don't care. They're not mad. They just want to, know. So, and we put that right on if you go to our website, saddlebackgolf.com, look at our tee time, we kind of explain it a little bit there too. My staff won't be able to communicate properly. And training is something we're always working on. We have a kind of a set sheet of, try to book earlier, book at different times, different days. We don't really run into this as much as everybody on this call thinks that we do. I think Phil would back me up on that one too, is that it's not as big of a deal as everybody makes it out to be. The fears are way over exaggerated.
A question from the chat: did you put stuff on the website? Did you do cart signage? What'd you do?
We did it on the website when the online tee time.
Okay.
Our big push is trying to get everybody to make online tee time, and so that really is my push to doing this seminar today. This webinar is why I called Rick Ropshaw. Was I want more people to get on this. I want the Ropshaws to be pushed to take us up a notch or two, the dynamic pricing, and make it better and better, because this is not my opinion that this is the future. It is the future. It's just money laying there, but we won't replace price sensitive customers with price insensitive customers. In 2019 and 2020, we didn't find that to be true. And on the flip side of that, at some point, who cares?
Yeah, right.
I had a guy, we have an Ultra Tuesday deal. On Tuesdays, we changed price to $42. And he came back from after 2 years, and he was mad. It went from 39 to 42, and he had a fit, which had nothing to do with dynamic pricing. But I'm thinking, I don't care about losing that guy. He's not my guy. So anyhow, and we aren't a real high end dollar golf course. So
look, I worked at public supermarkets when I was a kid in the front desk area, customer service area. People would complain if milk went up 5 cents, and they would demand a 5-cent discount. And we would give it to them because it's Publix, and they give into anything. But my point is there's people that people will complain about anything. So, I mean, you're right. You just kind of gotta chalk it up as.
We did anyhow. I'm sure not everybody can or will. And that's where the stiff upper lip comes in. But and I don't know how to move the pictures down to get to the bottom of this.
Oh, yeah, Ken will do that for you. Don't worry about
it. Dynamic pricing was and is the right answer for our course. I'm not sure if it's right for more for everybody out there, private clubs and what have you, or municipalities might have a hard time explaining to their boards. But if it's something you can get over, it certainly is something that you think about. We are struggling with some aspects of our dynamic pricing, and that's the ceilings. That's probably the toughest thing, because at some point, our algorithm doesn't really let it run away, but
we have a ceiling on it.
We do have a ceiling on it, yeah, each 2-hour period. So this year we're going to be working on those ceilings. We're going to probably take it down to 1-hour periods on our pricing, and a few other tweaks like that. But one of the things that came out of this was capital improvements that we actually paid for with the last couple of years. And then we really can justify with the prices that are being charged. Is now we have new carts with GPS. Instead of having to buy the 4500D Toro, we got the 4700D, which really mows our mounds much better. We got permanent bathrooms going out on the golf course, and overall, just success breeds success on that. You got to demand and get what you deserve on it.
Well, and I think that the capital improvement part is so important, because it goes to the more you make, the more you make. So because the new carts have GPS, you don't have to have the Rangers out there. Because we could buy the fancy Toro, we actually saved one mower out on the course. So, the permanent bathrooms actually over time make you money, because we spent an awful lot of money on those awful portalets that we had out there. I think like $7,000 a year we spent pumping porta potties. So it all works together when you're able to raise your profit a little bit. And I think the other thing that sometimes, and I haven't heard anybody mention it yet, is that the fixed cost is so high for golf. That's what I always say. The first golfer that I put out in the year on the tee box cost me $1.5 million. But every golfer over that, right, is about $3 a golfer. Like, it's the fixed costs that are so high. And I think, that's the part where we need to appreciate that raising the price from, let's say, $70 to $77. Okay, well, that's a 10% price increase, but it's probably an 800% profit increase.
Yep.
And that's the part, when we're so scared always, and this industry is scared always about raising price, it's so important, to appreciate what that dollar around really means. That's all the profit.
Rick Gay asked, is CPS capable of lowering rate percentage if off time? And yes, that's part of your bracketing that you do. And that's where you got to be careful, because if you don't want to be a dynamic discounter. And that's a term that Tom and I kind of came up with years ago, but and others out there, we consider dynamic discounters. I'm not going to mention them, but
well, that's what we were the first year we did it.
Yes.
We were so terrified to raise the lid, and I think this is an important part of the story. We were so, and by we I mean me, I was so disgruntled with dynamic pricing because I couldn't talk my team into raising that lid. And I said, okay, if all we're going to do is discount, let's scrap it. This isn't working.
Yeah.
Because dynamic only works, right, if you're not just going to lower the cost during the times when it's not filling, you have to raise it during, right, the Saturday and Sunday mornings. And so we went through that kind of, and literally we were ready to scrap it before they agreed. Everybody else on the team agreed that, okay, let's lift that ceiling.
Let's cut her loose.
Bring it up.
Yep.
And we've never taken the ceiling off. I mean, we've never, not even during COVID, we.
But you can put a floor on it, Rick, as far as your question. Yes, there's a floor and there's a ceiling. And
well, it's interesting, Whitey, you mentioned, I'm envisioning you, the algorithms, the artificial intelligence Terminator machine is pulling you in both directions. It's telling you, hey, Tuesday, I think we have to maybe pull it down a little bit, right? But then also on like Thursday at 1:00, it's trying to pull you up, or Saturday morning is trying to pull you up a little higher. Maybe you can feel that pull. And it's like, that could be what the predictive analytics are telling you, is the market might be saying it's not 79, even though you want to lid it at 79. It actually is telling you can go higher. But the ceiling and the floor you can set, right? So with pre-swing, so again, to your technology stack, is Club Profit's the base system. Pre-swing is your vendor of choice on the dynamic pricing. You can set in your parameters. Hey, I'm glad the Terminator wants to raise my price to $118. I'm going to cap it at $85 or whatever. So you're setting that lid and you're setting that floor on each of those. Or you could just say, don't set it and just let the computer run wild. I'm sure people have experiences with all of those things. But, getting back to what you said is, hey, I'm part of the community. I need to hold my head high. I'm going to put the lid here, but maybe next year I put the lid up a little higher, or maybe just to see what the Terminator does Saturday from 8 to 10, I'll just take the lid off altogether and just say, let's just see what happens. So you can make those tweaks and adjustments, I believe, on the back end of pretty much any dynamic pricing system that you're using.
And I think that's the right point, is that, when we finally got kind of broke through we're gonna raise a little bit, you do raise it more than you would have raised prices. So, I look at, we were getting $65 around on weekends in 2017, and we were getting, 82, 83, 84 kind of consistently. I mean, as you saw with our numbers, right? I mean, you just don't do those kind of numbers without increasing everything.
But I've always struggled, Scott, with April and May. You got your summer, winter, you got your rates scheduled, right? but you can't do it as fast as dynamic pricing can. Now I'm always mad because those tee times from noon to 3 o'clock on April and May are worth way more than I set for the heat of summer. And I don't want to have to break it down into 6 different seasonalities.
Yep.
So instead of getting $45 worth of cart and range balls, I was getting $65 all day long. Well, now it's $20. That is
I mean, you do that for 1,000 rounds or 2,000 rounds. I mean, now you can start to see where those monies go up. And I've heard the same thing anecdotally on the winter rates as well, which is normally like, hey, my golf course isn't in good a shape. It's turned a little brown. I don't have as many people. Like the COVID golfer did not care at all. Like, cool, I'm still coming out there at $65 or whatever your regular rate is. And they just never hit the winter rate button. It just never occurred to, like, well, I mean, I guess I'll wait for demand to cool down before I lower those winter rates. Well, the demand never cooled down. So if the golfer's like, I still have nothing else to do.
Right.
Like,
and then you got to be careful there too, because I just left and in Colorado, we're starting to open back up again. Everybody on this call from Colorado knows that. But we typically we have a seasonality to the dynamic pricing too, so it doesn't look like we're really gouging. But typically, in the winter, I'm charging $45 on a weekend when it's cold. It's 45. But when it's 55 or 60, which is a big difference, I'll go to $65. And why shouldn't I? I got 300 people vying for 100 spots. Why wouldn't I?
That's the only way. The only way to slow demand is to raise the price, right? Like, so if 1,000 people want this, one tee time, the only way to do that is to raise the price. So I know the NGCA's listserv is catching fire with this over the last couple of weeks about pricing. I think we know where Whitey stands. And I read a couple of posts like, don't increase the price because you're going to alienate the customer. What I heard Whitey say a couple of times was, you can have that price that they're used to, just not the time they're used to. Like, well, I want to pay I can only afford $40. Great, sounds like you're the Monday at 11:45 golfer, but you're not my Saturday morning at 9 a.m. golfer. So say, hey, listen, I have that rate for you, no problem. It's just not when you're used to seeing it.
Or maybe I'm not the course for you, and I'm okay with saying that.
Okay, yeah. I mean, I think there are cheaper alternatives, or they can go find that hot deal. Be like, okay, you're not my golfer because I've set the expectation. That gets back to Rob's, heady stuff of I have to have some sort of revenue at the end of it or profit at the end of it. I've worked backwards from. I can't do it, and I don't want to fire my customer, but you might have to at certain points on the squeaky wheel. Like, hey, I can't do it.
I've noticed the best operators, at least the one trend I see is that they've figured out how to get revenue from different groups of people. They're not just targeting one golfer that's willing to pay the highest price, but they've figured out how to get that guy, get the guy that's willing, pay quite a bit less, willing to get the twilight guy looking for they've learned how to market to each of these different groups of people effectively. So I think that helps too.
All right, so we're at the end of our time. I think we did a pretty good job on the questions in the chat. To kind of put a bow on this one for episode 6, we are going to do it next week. We want to kind of finish this up as we lead into the PGA show, and the PGA show and Golf Business Conference usually starts, kind of your implementation towards the season. So episode 6, we're going to try to put a bow on the entire series and give you the playbook to compete and win in 2021. So we've covered a lot of things, but if we were to say, okay, first thing you do is this, second thing you do is that, we're going to try to give you that playbook based off of what we're seeing for analytics, what we think the best recommendations are. Certainly dynamic pricing is going to be, a part of that, but we're going to try to wrap all this stuff up and give you a checklist that you can just start to go down and, again, hopefully just make 2021 the banner year. So I want to thank the O'Malleys, Whitey, and then the brains behind Whitey is very great. But I appreciate you taking the time during your Florida vacation that you've well earned to take my call and let me harass you and blackmail you into coming to being a part of the Guru. So we appreciate that. Thanks to Kent and Rob. Thanks to all of you for attending. Look for the registration for next week's webinar, and then we will send out a little something there for people that want to get together with all this chat. We're going to try to put a face to the name. And have some open dialogue questions centered around some booze and a relaxing atmosphere for the gurus and the gurus in the chat. So appreciate it. And
Yeah,
look
thanks,
forward to it.
thanks everybody.
Yeah,
Thanks.
thanks everybody for coming.
Yeah, thanks, Whitey.
You bet.
Take
Thanks,
care.
Whitey. Bye bye.